Learning Spanish at any level helps you communicate with hundreds of millions of people, both in the United States and around the world, who speak Spanish. So this is the beginning of a journey, and we hope you will continue this journey, learning Spanish and keeping your brains active and keeping our brains young. And for me, that's very important because my brain seems to struggle along at times, but when I switch into Spanish, it seems like my brain starts to activate itself a little bit, so you'll have that same experience, I hope. I'm going to present now a brief description of our system. And Sylvia Velez, our director, has been studying for years neuroscience and the way it relates to learning a language. And there are 7 important principles that we're going to explain to you just briefly. So it'll kind of show you what happens to your brain when you start studying a language and you start practicing the language. So the key number 1 is exercise. Your brain is an amazing organ, and you have millions of neurons which store information in many different ways. So when you learn a language, there are neurons that store verbal information, but there are also neurons that store auditory information. And when you read, your neurons store symbols, which make up the written language. Then your brain decodes those symbols. So the process today, then, we're going to start storing information in your neurons. Okay, the neurons are there even though, they don't talk to you a lot. It's not like knock knock, who's there? Your neuron number 3050. No, that's not quite how it happens. You're going to be storing information. Then you're going to do what is called wiring. That is the wiring. The cables in your brain. The neurons are connected. When your brain receives stimulation means that it's accessing the stored information and creating neural paths connecting the neurons. And so today we're going to start to interconnect the neurons, interconnect them with stimulation and practice. These paths become stronger and stronger, and your ability to speak Spanish will get better and better. There's a key number 3 that we call sensory integration. The learning process is reinforced through our senses. And when the senses are stimulated, more information is retained in the long-term memory. So we use visual, tactile, and auditory techniques which stimulate the senses and reinforce language learning. Key number 4 is attention. So remember, your teacher used to tell you, pay attention in school. Well, we know that our brains really only focus. We have an attention span of about 15 minutes, and sometimes our brains can wander a little bit. Sometimes our attention wanders, and it's a natural process. But what happens is that a student can get lost and then will not be able to retain the new information that has come in during that part of the class. So with our system, our teachers are trained to recognize this problem and to bring your attention back to what you're studying in the class. Key number 5 is neuroplasticity. Your brains are always storing new information, creating new neural paths. This is shown scientifically, and it's just kind of beginning. There are many new things being discovered about the brain in neuroscience. Learning is not just reserved for children. Learning is something that we can do at any age. And the best way to keep your brain active, one of the best ways, is to study a new language. Key number 6 is recognizing that there is short-term and long-term memory. So you learn new information and it starts to be stored in the cortex of the brain. Then that information is redistributed either to short-term memory or to long-term memory. And repetition in many different ways ensures that the information is stored in the long-term memory. And that's the key to learning a language, to remembering the things that you learn, because it is stored in your long-term memory. And finally, we have key number 7, which is called exploration. That is, you are always learning. What does that mean? That means that you can get to know the culture and the language that go together. They can make your learning experience more interesting. They can make it more enjoyable. When you are curious, when you travel, when you try new foods, when you listen to new music, you are exploring things. You are exploring new places, and you're expanding the neural connections in your brain.